Joel, last week we were looking at the wellness industry, how it's changed and where it's got to today. And where it's got to today is basically veering towards Nazism. How's that happening? Who's involved?
Well, quite like Pete Evans, I do not have the answers, but we can speculate. And I'd say that basically at this point, and it's very strange to watch, but the slippery slope toward Nazism in the new age bracket, it's just covered in fucking detergent. I mean, it's slippery. Turning this conspiratorial mindset into good old-fashioned anti-Semitism is easier than you might think, and I have seen it happen in real time on my Facebook feed. Old friends of mine, lean anti-vax, have a few issues with Bill Gates, traditionally conspiratorial, they just start poking that George Soros bear, and the next thing you know, they start talking about the cabal and the globalists.
And of course, the next thing you know, they are straight up pushing anti-Semitic tropes. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion is a popular one, shrouded in what sounds like a fairly mysterious name, is a ridiculous document originally from Russia that was literally designed to drum up hatred of the Jews. It's a Jewish world domination textbook written by a fake group of scary Jews called the Elders of Zion, and this has been circling around for many years. Henry Ford was a big fan and a major anti-Semite. But just when you think this whole the Jews did it mindset is about dead, it comes back with a fucking vengeance. It really never goes away, and it's really intense at the moment.
Yeah, it's poisonous. And this crossover isn't new. It's just taken on a new form, because loving incense and hating Jews is actually a thing that harks back to the good old days of the Third Reich. So, as usual, we are witnessing history repeating itself. Like, the Nazis bloody loved astrology. No fault to astrology here, mind you. As some of you already know, I was brought up in the astrology world, and it's mostly Nazi-free. Mostly. Although I do feel like that's
astrology
changing.
Where there are fewer Nazis anymore.
Well, yes. I mean, I guess there was like a sort of dramatic reduction toward the end of the 40s, but then we're having an uptick now.
Yeah, late 1940s. I'm very reluctant time for promoting Nazism, but they got right on it after that. Yes.
Yes, I think astrologers and good investment can be sort of, diametrically opposed. But like things like using a pendulum to make decisions, otherwise known as dowsing or divining, is something I used to play with as a kid. Anything to me was a fucking pendulum. And, it was just something the family did. Turns out Hitler was a fucking huge fan of this too.
This explains a lot,
that maybe would have been... Yes, it does, doesn't it? Look, it was a rich experience.
If you ever start babbling about invading Poland, I know we're all in very, very deep trouble.
Well, the pendulum was saying to do it. So they created a pendulum institute to help the Navy win the war.
They lost that one fairly early. Before 45, the German Navy was basically gone.
Yep, sadly, it didn't really work. But, that's all props to us for not having to speak German now. That's good. It's a very abrasive language.
It's easy to learn. It's just, anyway.
Those long words are very intimidating. But it turns out anti-vaxxers in Germany also jumped on the Nazi bandwagon. This is a funny one. I like this is interesting. So basically, they claimed that vaccine programs were actually a part of a Jewish conspiracy to damage the German people, to weaken the Aryans. And this line seems to have been a fucking long game, because it's gone from World War II propaganda to current day memes, because it turns out the Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla has Jewish heritage. So... 1 + 1 = fuck you, right? Like, I mean, come on, guys. Just give it a rest. But if that wasn't enough for you, the Nazis had a straight-up wellness crossover themselves. Hitler and Himmler were big into alt health, including homeopathy and organic veggie diets. Everyone's like, Hitler was a vegetarian. But it goes way further than that. It wasn't just the fact that he didn't like pork sausage. He was all about proper straight up wellness shit. And this stretches into their love for the occult and the general sort of crossover into Indian spirituality and yoga. The Nazis were big on yoga. And this is actually like something, if you want to look further into this, Tom Taneke did a thing called White Trader, which was at the Melbourne Fringe Festival. And I think he just throws it around for free now. But you might have to go on his Patreon. Oh, give him $5.
Give him $5. Yes, he's a good man.
I gave him 15 to watch it. It was good.
Man. Let's not forget that the swastika is actually a Hindu symbol and appropriated by the Nazis.
Yeah.
And let's not forget also that Adolf Hitler had a particularly close relationship with Big Pharma, such as it was in the 1930s. He was a raving drug addict. through most of his years, largely set up by his physician, Theodore Morell. Have a
Yeah.
Morell. Have a click on that, readers, just to have a look at a bloke. He is a Nazi straight from Central Casting.
Yes.
But Morell was actually an alt physician who would um, uh, use therapies and treatments and drugs that hadn't been cleared for human use, and he basically treated Hitler like a guinea pig. Morell was deeply
Excellent.
mistrusted by the senior Nazi ranking officers, but because he was giving Adolf the good stuff every day, and basically from about
Yeah, that's it.
1940 onwards, Hitler was roused at about 6 o'clock in the morning. No, basically that's not true. He was like Churchill. He wouldn't get up much before about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He was roused from his slumber with a blast of methamphetamine, which had been invented by the Germans in the
Yep.
20s, or been created by German pharmaceutical companies in the 1920s. Then given some cocaine and pretty much fed on that for the rest of the day in injections initially, first thing in the morning, and then pills throughout the day, and then he'd take a lot of benzos to put him to sleep. So that was, you know,
Sounds like a fucking great time.
that is pretty much unsustainable on a daily basis for 5 years, and certainly led to.
No wonder you want to be a Nazi. You get all the good drugs. This sounds like a fucking great group to be a part of. I mean, I haven't had any good connects for a while. I'm just going to go down and check out my local
was
Nazis.
basically poisoning him on a daily basis, but not with any intent to remove Hitler from power, just because he was a crank doctor. So that also sort of fits into that old scenario, and this bullshit that they come up with now, the whole my immune system is perfect. Those sort of isolated wellness lunatics talk about that and say that they are not at risk of getting COVID. It just sort of fits in well with this Aryan idea of certain people being superior to others. The immune system is such a crapshoot, even for highly skilled immunologists and physicians around the world. They don't know what is going to inspire one person's immune system and why that will work and why it won't work for another 20 others. So it's all highly complicated, and it's not a matter of saying, gee, I eat my greens, I eat my spinach, and therefore, my immune system is just utterly perfect, and I can't get sick. Look at me. I'm chiseled from fucking stone. And
it's the most annoying
So at
mindset.
the end of the day, there is that sort of connection, and it's really not a new one. But I would say that the crossover with the wellness industry and the modern neo-Nazi movement is less about the good old days of Veggo Hitler and flexible SS officers, and much more about the white supremacist movement. Knowing how to pick a good rube from the crowd, and that's what's really going on. Coronavirus has been an amazing way to see who is gullible and who is not.
Yeah, it has been a bit of a litmus test for morons. But, despite lockdowns, we've seen in-person protests and rallies, general sort of, collections of people, mostly against the lockdown itself, which has like a sort of delightful irony to it. But the BLM movement in the US and across the world has maintained a huge presence despite restrictions on movement. But these people wear fucking masks. It's a huge difference. These fucking freedom rallies are these plague rats walking around unsheathed, breathing on each other, saying, "Oh, I think I had a cough recently. Can you look at my lungs?"
And also, the world is run by a cabal of Jewish bankers. And that's kind of true. I mean,
well, is it?
Well, no, that's not true. But I would say that that still we have alarming numbers of extreme right activists in Europe and the United States. We have growing numbers in Australia as well. And look, the BLM movement is a global movement. And which finds different forms in other places, but we are still seeing large numbers at right-wing rallies, and in Europe in particular, and we've seen the influence of it in the United States. and a little bit here too. It never goes away. And you know, the red pilling sort of happens online these days in private Telegram groups due to the sort of social media crackdowns of late and more traditional forms here,
operating in the
Facebook,
shadows.
etc. When they march, we see them in all their glory. In the States, we see the Q-Anon banners, the Trump flags mixed with Proud Boys, militia groups, and good old-fashioned Nazis, all high-fiving each other over not wearing a mask at the shops. So there's that connection, right? There's that connection. But at the end of the day, who is it really that's making us wear masks at the shops? Well, they say it's the Jews, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an easy slope. And you can see how all these people turn up to these rallies and they look like they're normies, but they're side by side with flat out Nazis. And it's just like people go to prison, they come out better criminals. You go to a freedom rally march, you're probably going to become a better Nazi. I mean, like, it's just the way it works. Like, someone's going to start a chat with you saying, have you thought about the Jews much recently?
It's funny.
You know, look,
funny
I'll say
you
so.
Should say that. I've thought about little else for the last 3 months, and now that I'm with some like-minded souls, it's just accelerated.
Yes, that's accelerating. That's something we'll talk about later. So, like, look, someone very close to me who I will not name, this is a bit of a scarring moment for me, to be honest, but I'm going to speak very candidly about it. They talked openly about how they don't trust the Jews, which I found very difficult to really react to, didn't know what to do. They think they're controlling the world, and it's the usual tropes, but this predated coronavirus. And this is the kind of conspiracy-driven mindset that's being fertilized now that has these real-world implications of spreading. Because I know, like, you know, she has Jewish friends.
This person close to you has Jewish friends.
Yeah. But but it would be that thing of like, oh no, not you. No, the other ones. You know, the bad ones. You know, textbook racism bullshit. And it's that sort of mindset that just like, I don't really know how to deal with that. And I was in shock at the time, but I was also on notice thinking, if she's thinking this, it's got to be coming from somewhere. And since looking into this, it makes a lot more sense now. You know, the cabal, the globalist, all the bullshit. It's been going on for ages. It's just been so amplified during the fucking pandemic. So since then, the idea of New Age types being recruited by Nazis, it seems like it's becoming more of a common concept. A lot of journos have covered it. There's Conspirituality covering in great detail. And we're kind of comfortable with the idea now that where there's incense smoke, there's also going to be burning crosses. But I just find it difficult to understand how this really happened. Like, it's just a wild set of political alignments.
Well, there are a few things at play here. For starters, anti-vax movements, have a look at their protests. They're inherently white. You won't see too many other besides white faces in that crowd. Have a think about it. How many anti-vaxxers can you think of that aren't white? And while vaccine hesitancy is huge within BIPOC communities, it's not due to memes. It stems from medical mistrust rooted in generations of medical racism, and that's another podcast for another time. But white anti-vax sentiment comes from a cult built on bullshit misinformation and the idea that the big bad wolf of big pharma is going to shoot you full of poison. The big bad wolf can easily be swapped out here for the Jews under the guise of globalists in the cabal and a new world order that is going to reduce populations and destroy our white way of life. So when you look at it, you have a group of white people who think their very existence is under threat from the Jews through mass vaccinations. This is a fertile ground for stepping up their game into a full-blown Nazi mindset.
Yeah, it's an easy way to capture the hearts and minds of people who are just teetering on the edge of mistrust that need someone to blame. And Bill Gates is an easy one, but at the same time, it doesn't quite fit as well as the Jews. So while things like anti-vax sentiment seem like usual fringe politics bullshit run by cult leaders and grifters, there is another element of white nationalist groups using this pharmaceutical panic to try to kick off a race war that will basically destroy the current order.
Well, the side effects of this kind of psyop works to fulfill another cause as well, acceleration. Accelerationism is a political and social theory that has picked up steam over the past decade in far-right circles. They feel that a violent overthrow of the current system is inevitable and clearly have political ADHD. And while I share their traits of impatience, I'm really not looking forward to any casual civil war scenarios these dickheads are looking to kickstart. Destabilising trust in traditional Western institutions such as democracy, our parliaments, our courts, and the health of our population are excellent ways to get that ball rolling.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking into this and I saw there's this Telegram group. This is from a Daily Beast article called the Corona Chan News. I'm guessing Chan's 4chan. Great. And there's the plot to inject white nationalism into the anti vaccine. It is overt and shameless. They're not even fucking hiding it. One of these nutters in this group said, "We must further radicalize the anti-vaccine movement." Another one said, "They have the potential for extremism against the system. Encourage militancy. The racial angle can be used or it can be avoided for wider reach. Propaganda memes will be essential for this effort." And you can see that memes work in, as we mentioned earlier, Craig Kelly's post, 700 comments, 1,000 shares. These people are the virus. They will share.
Well, Craig's an anti-vaxxer, but I wouldn't put him in the anti-Semitic territory. But that's basically just an indication. An indication of how these things can progress so quickly. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the thing of the wider reach issue. Like, if you put something that makes these things racist for white in this thing, they won't get as shared. Because Craig isn't. No, Craig's not a Nazi.
Craig talks a fair bit of bullshit
he's a lot of things. He's not a Nazi.
About COVID policy. But yes, I mean, it's just a way of that sort of snowballing effect of social media and where it's all sort of going.
Yeah, that's
it.
So they mobilise this.
No, I was just going to say, those avenues are already open. So through social media, from hard right groups into the sort of wellness type, sifting down into that sort of network, it's already established. And these things just get passed on and on and on because there are so many of these people who are totally pilled.
Yep. And if you go into places like Telegram, these kind of Nazi-tinged memes can just be inserted in without too much fanfare. No one really gives a fuck. You see them happening all the time. I swear Telegram is full of bots because there's just constantly these random things just being posted in completely irrelevant chains. But that's a whole other story. Basically, when it comes to these guys, they use traditional political tactics and they use them through memes. This is this like mix of traditional textbook sociology mixed with new technological forms of communication like memes. And in the Telegram group, they instruct their followers, your goal this week is to tell 5 people directly that the vaccine has the potential to sterilize people. Family and friends first. Nobody in public health is mobilizing like this. Political organizing works. When you tell someone to tell 5 people, that's an exponential effect. This will work.
And a phrase I never thought I would see, militant wellness, is now a thing. People are so radicalised by the idea of alternative health treatments that they start to resemble a sort of military operation, organising and using propaganda tactics to push a message with an objective, and a bizarre one at that, to push people away from pharmaceutical solutions and toward supplements, the grift. There it is. What a strange hill to die on. It feels like the next pipe bomb we find is going to have a fucking manifesto about taking vitamin C daily attached to it.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I mean, like, we've got a situation here where, like, absolute crooks, like former self-proclaimed rock star and general political new age pest, Sasha Stone, riling up people for serious actions, actual violence, throwing the term around treason and talking about taking out lawmakers, like as if he even fucking knows what that means. The grave nature of these spirituality mixed diatribes, laced with these politically violent calls to action that tend toward the extreme right wing, are surely going to be keeping law enforcement awake at night over the next few years. I mean, the implication of violence in the militant wellness community are actually quite scary, and it's the last place you'd fucking expect it.
What I'd say is that it shocked me when I first saw it a year ago.
Yeah.
And now people like you and I, Joel, look into this world. We're almost becoming complacent about it now.
Yeah. It feels like a part of the furniture.
It does.
Craig Kelly couldn't even sell this furniture. Sorry, that was just such a fucking... That was such an opportunistic joke.
I'll let you off.
It wasn't even funny. Oh, whatever. I could have...
But we would,
So we would be remiss if we did a spot about the neo-Nazi wellness crossover without mentioning friend of the podcast, Pete Evans, who has shown on social media posts that he is not only leaning a bit toward the neo-Nazi side, but also a Holocaust denier, which is just fucking
Pete Evans is the never in of those precise ways. There was always hints, there's
it's vague.
Typically Pete vague stuff about denying the Holocaust.
But then when he wasn't vague about the real history of Germany, that's still vague, but not too vague. But when he said, I was waiting for someone to notice a sonar ad, the walls came crashing down. His vagueness is a strategy, and it's not
Yeah,
a dumb
I mean,
one.
the Sonnenrad is owned by the SS, who were actually charged with the Holocaust. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a bit naughty.
it's
But then
more than
again, don't worry,
naughty.
it didn't happen. It was just the Jews making a point. So that's we've got
Mm.
that going for us. So his t-shirt, which he always wears, "Food is medicine." I think he's got like one headshot with it, but he throws it all the time. It wraps it up. I mean, this is the kind of thing that he is. He's a wellness machine. And while I actually do appreciate the ketogenic approach to eating, which I really should be sticking to,
Oh man, it's crazy.
so
Just
many
go down to
fucking
KFC.
carbs.
If
Just
you
like
get
a
that
hunger
KFC,
machine.
if you get that KFC craving, act on it. That's my advice. That's
Ah,
my
you fucking enabler. But I'm not a big fan of his approach towards the
no.
Jews. And I think so, like, fair enough, because his Telegram is an absolute cesspool of anti-Semitic sentiment, which is arguably tacitly
Well,
approved by Pete, because he's famous for
yeah.
rapidly deleting anything he doesn't like. And I tell you what, he leaves those posts up. They do not get deleted. If you want to sum up the far right and wellness crossover, like, at the end of the day,
He's
go no further.
he's certainly a light carrier for it, and of course now he's running for the
Yes, a light
Senate
worker.
under the Great Australian Party. We're not quite sure whether he's number one or number two on the New South Wales ticket, but we'll find out soon. And this, the Great Australian Party we
poor
talked
bastard.
about, it's a fringe political party that sits to the right of One Nation, more the sort of political wing of the sovereign citizen movement. And seeing Pete Evans run run under a Greens ticket on the Northern Rivers with the promise of green energy and clean water just sounds so much more natural. But the wellness scene,
It's like
one that
he's
I've
calling.
always seen as a bunch of greenies, now think that climate change is a conspiracy by the globalists, that freedom is everything and self-interest trumps all. What a terrible shame it is.
It's bizarre. I've always seen Pete Evans, if he was ever to be a political actor, to be a greenie
Yeah, that's what you'd think.
who would just be hugging trees.
Mm.
But no, it's like it's just gone the exact opposite way, where it's like, he'd rather set a bonfire to prove the fucking, climate change green is wrong. I mean,
They do love
but
their
like,
fires.
another thing that was like not entirely unexpected, but a massive crossover has been the way QAnon has been absolutely infiltrated into the MMA scene. And while it's hardly surprising a bunch of alpha male dipshits will be flying Trump flags and flaunting their perfect immune systems in this sweaty, narcissistic outburst on the internet, it has a very real world implication for the sport. And like, it also has its own little sort of bizarre political crossover story as well, which is pretty funny. Because like Tito Ortiz, who like MMA people know this guy, he has given more punches to the head than received, but he's had a few. He's found himself a councilman for Huntington Beach in Orange County, California. And whether it was the power of celebrity or the fact that Orange County is just filled as fuck, he was elected with the most votes in
That's
city
Disneyland.
history.
That's Disneyland. Orange County in Southern California. That's Disneyland,
Yes,
folks.
Anaheim.
So, there might be a bit of connection there too.
It's around there. Yeah, it's a weird place. I got a friend, Larry, who lives there, and I love him, but we go shooting. It's great. I really like guns. It's really bad. It's one of my weaknesses.
Guns are good.
So his platform of generally being a pest about coronavirus restrictions have left him politically isolated, but galvanized as fuck. I mean, who would have thought like an alpha male MMA guy is, politically galvanized and generally just belligerent about their beliefs. The other council officials, likely seething with jealousy, but also trying to stop their arm of government being a complete shit show, have moved against him for essentially not showing up to meetings, acting like a fuckwit, and using this as a toxic political platform for baseless claims about health implications, but not wearing a mask, mostly. While the MMA community has a perfect storm of community and right-wing bent that just creates this perfect political candidate for these weird times, we are fucking lucky the wellness scene, Pete Evans, doesn't have the same kind of pull these American cage fighters do at the battle.
But again, it's a sort of unsurprising connection. You've got people who are, MMA fighters. They're not walking around basically extolling the virtues of the Westminster system. They're not. They're not saying, separation of powers. What a tremendous thing that is. No, they've gone down a path. Many of them have had sort of broken backgrounds, and they've gone down a path where now they've enjoyed smashing a few people in the head, knocking them out, and they become sort of these sort of powerful figures.
Yes, they become somewhat lunatics at the end of the day. But this is one of the things that's interesting, and it comes out on the ground as well as in the ring, because this is the kind of thing that walks its way in on foot. Sonny Brown friend of the podcast and also host of the Sunny Round
G'day,
program.
Sunny.
Shameless plug there. Has been trying to dodge red-pilled sentiment in his training sessions since the pandemic started brainwashing people on the scene. I mean, like, he listened to the last episode and he was saying about the yoga teachers who are avoiding the conversations in the class. He said, I can relate to that. I mean, you know, same shit I have to deal with. Red-pilled lunatics coming through the door and sort of sitting there going, oh shit, I need to dodge this. So there's also Stefan Kesting, who one of Sonny's friends, Daniel Christian, he also, like, you know, he referred me to this, host of the Strenuous Life podcast. He's been using his platform to basically convince these fucking meatheads to put down the crack pipe and just look at the science. But he's lost a shitload of followers as a result. And he knows this and he speaks openly about it. I mean, like, I subscribe to his podcast and I listen to it every now and then when it's not one of the, like, broadly MMA ones. It's more about, you know, the conspiracy side. But the MMA community, and this is something I think he's found out the hard way, are very easily peeled and very hard to deprogram, and they will resist. And for every Kesting out there, there's got to be another 100 throwing out red pills to get likes.
I mean, that's the greater. I mean, that's the greater concern, isn't it? I mean, you know, we've seen this with Q-Anon and the failure of Trump, January 6th and all that sort of stuff. The problem is you've just got literally thousands and thousands of people that need to be professionally deprogrammed in order to function.
Yeah.
And you know, and now we've got other elements there, you know, and let's just say those facilities are not going to be available.
No. I mean, there's a big argument within the Q research community as to whether deprogramming works. Stephen Hassan, one of the big deprogrammers who got involved in this sort of thing, got out of line with a few people for saying something. It wasn't transphobic, but just kind of stupid, tone deaf, you know, what can you do? But I'm on that side. Like, look, it's just speculation, but I do think that deprogramming is kind of the way to go because these people need a shitload of therapy. Like, I don't know what to do. And honestly, my approach these days is just to give up. I just give up straight away. I just can't be bothered. You know, fuck it. But that's bad because I've lost some friends. I'm no doubt I'll lose some more, and family members as well. Just, you know, casualties of this bizarre war. And I kind of just give up because I don't know how to save you. And, you know, I've got other shit to do.
You just sort of have to give up on that. And
I've got to do the fucking laundry. I can't be bothered.
But yeah, that just means that these people are never going to get better.
And they just surround themselves with like-minded lunatics until it gets to a point where they've got a new thing to follow. You know, like when Q stops posting, they just find a new thing because they're already in this fucking cult. The only people that are their friends now are lunatics, and their only, you know, mutual interest is being a lunatic. I mean, like, it's a sort of mass
kind of culture effect. The only things that they're actually informing themselves with are the things that they agree with, and everything else is rejected. So it becomes, you know, there is no vicious cycle. There is no influence that's going to take them away from the cliff, you know.
Yep, it's like that. And we're seeing this with the coronavirus being weaponized for political gain, basically across all parties, but more notably by failed furniture salesman and ex-Liberal Party MP who is now the independent member for Hughes, Craig fucking Kelly. Now, Kelly has found an almost cult-like following on social media with a bizarre melange of libertarians, wellness lunatics, mostly wellness lunatics, and they've become adoring fans of one of the least inspiring political figures in Australian history, just because he's pushing an anti-vaccine and pro-alternative health to COVID-19. It's so easy to be a completely shit individual with no fucking merit. You say a few things that are anti-vax and pro-alternative health, and all of a sudden, you're a god. Like, it's just painful. Craig was looking at a pre-selection battle for the seat of Hughes that he was not going to fucking win. He was objectively out of a job. So what did he do? He reformed himself as a lunatic fringe cult leader. Putting aside the idea that his memes are being probably made by staffers on government salaries, and I have nothing to back that up with, but I would like to see whether he's using Crown employees for that. But regardless, Kelly is a misinformation machine gun. And while this might land in a plum spot in Sky News After Dark, it's not going to get you back into Parliament, champ. You're not going to get the fucking numbers. The fringe is the fringe for a reason. You don't get votes. So whether it's the Great Australian Party or Reignite Democracy, the two groups that basically give him the most oxygen and support right now, the fringe are exactly that. They're the fringe. You're not the majority, you're the fringe. So despite the countless engagements he gets on social media, drumming up his loyal followers into a fear-induced frenzy of anxiety and general lunacy, it's not going to get you back in the House of Reps,
I said in previous episodes, I would imagine it'll get, if he runs as an independent in Hughes at the next federal election, he'll get less than 3,000 or 4,000 votes, and that's in a pool of about 100,000 voters. And that's it. You know,
Yep.
they're the people who support him. That
He's just
lunatic
going to go
fringe of
nowhere.
3 or 4% of Australia.
Yeah, there's just no chance at all. I don't even know if he's going to run for the seat again. But a Liberal Party politician, a failed furniture salesman, and his complete blockhead from the South is now this New Age cult leader. How the fuck did that happen? His comment section are full of these enlightened New Age types saying, "Go Craig," like as if he isn't just a bit of a fucking dope that snuck into pre-selection on an unlikely election cycle and then just like sort of Bradbury'd his way into this new fucking specialty of being a fucking New Age health alt fucking guru. Piss off. It's amazing how you can just pander to these people and suddenly you are just deified by morons. They will share your memes and it will just go from there. And this is just the most bizarre thing because somehow you think you have credibility because ivermectin, because you're copying and pasting
cleanest head of hair
preprints from nowhere.
Craig Kelly. You
Fucking
will
moron,
never see a
honestly.
louse, indeed, on him or lice on him. But look, the truth is we are at the end of an era. Trump, the supposed light worker of the militant wellness community, has been deposed. And while he's going to be a pest for some time, I can't see him keeping the attention of the wellness guys who will move on to other false idols in the anti-vaccine fear and anxiety industry. Trump, let's not forget, has come out as pro-vaccine. There's a ton of these people, and I'm not going to name them, but they are going to be a part of the political fringe furniture for some time to come.